What is the best way of dealing with government bloggers and propaganda peddlers? Well, the answer to that one is very simple. You totally understand something. When you understand something, it is impossible to fall for fake narratives, propaganda, etc., which, as we all know, is flooding, currently, is really flooding our space. Now, regarding a man called Rigathi Gachagua, immediate former Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, there have been too many stories floating around. And some of the stories I'm seeing are very laughable. But guess what? The most intelligent of us, the smartest of us all, are swallowing these stories hook, line, and sinker. Now, let's get this right. I'm not saying Rigathi Gachagua is Safi Kamapamba. I'm not saying he's an angel. After all, he's a politician. And all politicians who have agreed on this channel are exactly the same. But we, as the voters and the citizens, what are we looking for? We're looking for change. We are looking for a better Kenya. And therefore, if a politician comes along and he offers a way in the direction we want to go, why not? Of course, he's guilty of having done this and that in the past. But hey, even that favorite politician of yours is not clean. He has also done this and that. So, on my show today, I want to make sure that at the end of it, anybody who takes in this video totally, and I mean totally, understands this Rigathi Gachagua manenos. So that going forward, you'll be totally immune to government bloggers, government propaganda and narratives, kabisa. And we will all understand why Rigathi Gachagua, like him or hate him, is a political tool we can use as long-suffering Kenyans to get out of the mess we are in and to move our country forward. Now, it would seem that it is very difficult for Bwana Gachagua to attend a church service in peace. That is what is very clear right now. Because more often than not, there'll be tear gas, there'll be goons, there'll be even the police, like we saw in Othaya yesterday. Now, I believe we all know, at least most of us, that all these attacks, all of them, are coming from the government. I hope we all understand that. And because this video is all about understanding, a good place to start is by asking the simple question, why? What purpose does this violence against Rigathi Gachagua achieve? Because it seems counterproductive. It is actually making Gachagua more and more popular by the day. It is gaining Gachagua sympathy, even from those who may not have wanted to direct any sympathy towards Rigathi Gachagua. So let's start there. Now, there is something very important we should understand about violence in Kenyan politics. Actually, this thing dates back to the colonial days. And you see, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. And also, you cannot teach a system, an old system, new tricks. That is the problem we have in Kenya. The systems we're still using, most of them date back to colonial days. And now I'm going to say something that not all of us will agree with me immediately, but it is 1000% true. In Kenyan politics, violence has been the most effective tool by far, historically. Let me repeat that. Violence has really worked in Kenyan politics. It has been so super effective. And why is violence so effective? Number one, it turns the voters. Oh yes. You do not have support in a certain area of the country or in a certain area of your constituency. Violence changes everything. Now this is very sad, but it is how Kenyan politicians have been behaving. Let me give you a quick example. When Kenya reverted back to multi-party democracy in 1992, former President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi used this tool to great effect. Older Kenyans will remember that immediately after multi-party democracy was declared, immediately after, a very strange brand new animal that we had not seen for decades emerged. The name of that animal was tribal clashes, that is violence. Let me break it down further. You may have very strong political views. You may be very much against a certain political candidate. But when vurugu enters the game, violence, everything changes. Because you're human. You want peace. And therefore you look for the best way to restore peace. I mean, you want your family safe, your kids, your wife, you want them safe. That is top priority. It is above any political inclinations you may have. And this is precisely why Moi received a surprisingly high number of votes from the House of Mumbi community in the Rift Valley after using this very unfortunate tool. And this leads us to point number 2. What this thing does, it also makes you stop supporting those people who may cause these troubles, vurugu, violence, to come back to you. Okay? Now fast forward to the present. You know, there are very wealthy members of the House of Mumbi running huge businesses, huge industries, who now are forced to distance themselves from Rigathi Gachagua, no matter what their personal feelings are about his politics. Why? For the simple reason that they need to look after their business first, before they start talking or thinking politics. For example, you run a major media house in the country called Kenya. If you support Rigathi Gachagua directly, in a very obvious way, what will happen to your media house? You rely on the government for licenses. You rely on the government for so many things. Even advertising comes from some certain government organizations. Well, there's been a lot of controversy about that. But then, believe it or not, there is still some government advertising that trickles into our media. I'm sure now you're getting it. But to spell it out, the violence is a clear message to anybody who may want to support that character. Stay away. Don't touch. Hiyo ni vitima. Too hot to handle. Touch it and serikali will deal with you. Now, theoretically, even supporters of that character, who is always visited by violence, will hesitate before they attend this man's rally, because anything can happen. The rally can be disrupted. The stopover conversation with the people, the meet the people tours, we call them in Kenya, can be disrupted with lethal and maybe sometimes fatal consequences. So you stay away. You're wise. You stay away. Now, here's the super fascinating thing. It would seem, in my opinion, that this time around, this ancient tool from the colonial days has failed to work in the Murima region. Okay? Now, why? Why has it not worked? Simple answer. The times, they are changing. Oh, yes. Kenyans are fed up. Most Kenyans have reached that point of, I don't care. After all, it can't get much worse than it already is. It can't get much worse. Therefore, haidhuru, I don't care. But still, the government keeps on using it again and again and again. Why? Well, in my opinion, 2 reasons. You can't teach an old system new tricks. What else do you want them to do? They can't think beyond that. Those security boys, they're training. There is nothing in their training manual that is an option to this tool. Yeah, as uncouth, as unconstitutional, as illegal as it is, there is no plan B. And the second reason is that actually it still has some impact. How so? Now, there is a very important section of voters called women. Okay? Women will always play it safe. And if you have noticed, with Rigathi Gachagua rallies and his campaigns, women hawako wengi, they are not many. Now, for anybody who has been involved in a serious political campaign in the country called Kenya, they will already have this information. Women are very influential in politics, especially when it comes to an election. If you want to know, for instance, who is going to win in a certain constituency, listen to what the women are saying. You will know very early the person who is going to win. Okay? And you don't have to believe me about this next thing I'm going to say, yeah? But it is 1,000% true. There are very many politicians in Kenya, in our history, who have won an election simply because the women like them. The women admire them. The man could be a woman's man, ako na wanawake wengi sana. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to go into women's psychology in this particular video. But I can tell you, women will either like you as a political candidate or they will not. If they don't like you, wewe kwisha maneno. Now, of course, this is a family channel, yeah? So I have to say this with wisdom. Have you ever asked yourself, how come Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta became so popular so quickly in the Murima region? Forget the other reasons. I can assure you one of the reasons why is that alipendwa na wanawake. Walikuwa wanamuona, wanasikia dhitima. And so the man became very popular very quickly. Nafikiri watu wazima ambao wananisikiza wamenielewa kabisa. Okay, this is politics. This is human nature. This is reality. Take it or leave it. And we found it like that, and we will leave it like that. It is the way of the world. And by the way, this thing is worldwide. If I can rewind a bit very far back in history, there was once a politician, soldier, who got into a lot of trouble because of women, because of this issue. Yeah, this man was very handsome. The good book tells us King David was very handsome, very attractive. And so one day, when he was coming back into town after a major victory, the women started singing a song. King Saul kills thousands, but David kills tens of thousands. From that day on, David was a marked man by the king. He got into trouble because of his good looks and the women, voters, in quotes. So, there is nothing new under the sun. Okay? Wah, I got carried away there. Hey, I took too long on that issue of women. And we have so many other key points to look at. Okay, one of the narratives that is coming out is that what happened on Sunday was stage managed. Actually, that one we can deal with very quickly. Have all these other attacks against Rigathi Gachagua been stage managed? Of course not. And then, in Othaya, those people who turned up this time, let alone the other times, were heavily armed na mabunduki kubwa kubwa kama AK-47. Who has access to those things? The government, of course, which leads us to the other narrative, propaganda. And it is as follows, that Rigathi Gachagua is still very friendly with Ruto. And what he's doing is preparing the ground for 2027. And he will continue behaving the way he is. And then at the last minute, he will join Ruto and he will move with his voters to Ruto. Okay. For starters, that is not factual. That is not the way Murema voters behave. If Rigathi Gachagua today moves and joins Ruto, he will move alone. Okay? Maybe in another part of the country, you can maybe pull off something like this, but not in Murema. Okay? The second and most devastating point, think about it. Since Rigathi Gachagua started on this crusade, has he done a lot of damage to William Samoei Ruto, his presidency, his politics? Of course, too much damage. I mean, recently, Rigathi Gachagua revealed to us, well, it is something we already knew, but then now it is official because an insider, a former insider, told us. Rigathi Gachagua told us that in the 2022 presidential elections, Raila Amolo Odinga, the late, beat Ruto by very, very, very many votes. It was a landslide, as we've always said on this channel. Okay? Now that is very damaging. Hizo ni siri za nyumbani, siri za jikoni, siri za bedroom ya UDA. Rigathi Gachagua is spilling it all out. So, does it make sense that this is a setup? That Rigathi Gachagua is preparing the way for Ruto? I think for anybody who wants to believe that, you need to see Daktari wa Akili. It doesn't make any sense. Okay? Therefore, it is rubbish. And let us end with the most important point that will help us to totally understand what drives Rigathi Gachagua. Shortly after Rigathi Gachagua was impeached, there is a video online, and there are many, many photographs of Rigathi Gachagua walking away with his dear wife. And she was crying. She was in tears. And Rigathi Gachagua looked very sad. Now, if you're a man, you will know that how you finish a man is to make his wife cry. And that man cannot do anything about it. There are very few things in this world that you can do to a man that will finish him like that one. In my opinion, that was the moment Rigathi Gachagua decided in his brain that he will not rest, he will not sleep, he will not relax, he will not have any peace until Ruto is gone. So that is the driving force behind Gachagua. Trust me, these are the stories. I don't know he wants to be president, I don't know he wants what. All those are red herrings. Okay? The truth is, the real motivation of Rigathi Gachagua is that moment I've talked about. When that was done to him, leaving his wife crying, leaving Gachagua helpless. And he is a man. The male primitive instincts kicked in. And we're still seeing the consequences of that. Pure and simple. Now, most major leaders in Kenya, politicians, everybody, has condemned the actions of the government in a church where Gachagua was, in Othaya, over the weekend. However, in my next video, I'm going to focus on a remark by a man called Kalonzo Musyoka that most people missed, but is a very serious remark. Hey, the implications are devastating. Okay? So that is something for you to look forward to. Please wait for my next video with bated breath. And when you take it in finally, you will understand why. Now, as I bring our very latest offer to an end, you have one final window of opportunity to get this amazing ebook on exactly how the late Cyrus Njirongo was assassinated, complete with a video taken on the scene of the crash, moments after it happened. And the new offer is, wait for this one, only Kenya shillings 14.99. You can see details on your screens right now. Please rush. in the next 48 hours or so, this offer will be kaput, gone. So please take full advantage. The sensitive information in this ebook and the video is well worth it and should help anybody understand exactly what went down here. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.